My next guest, Bret Baier, host of Special Report. Bret has a brand new book out, To Rescue the Constitution, George Washington and the Fragile American Experiment. And To Rescue the Constitution is terrific, Bret. Congratulations on this book. It is unnervingly relevant to the disaster of this week. I don't know if you've had that feeling as well, but Washington saved the Union a few times. Right now, Israel's going to struggle for its life if Hezbollah gets into this. Has that occurred to you as you begin your book tour?
Yeah, Hugh, good morning. Thanks for having me on. I think that connection has not been lost on me. And, you know, Washington was a kind of a steady, thoughtful presence, you know, whether on the battlefield or setting up the new government. And, you know, leaders are going to have to rise to the occasion in Israel, and they are now. We're in for a long haul. I had the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations on Special Report last night, and he was very blunt and essentially said, listen, this is going to take weeks, and there are going to be some painful images that pop up here, but they are going to try to annihilate Hamas and take out that threat. I think it's going to be fascinating to watch, but also excruciating and visceral and emotional. I'm anchoring with Dana Perino again this morning, and it really does hit you when you see all these stories and these videos about kids being killed and families being torn apart.
You've just finished writing about the American Revolution. For comparison purposes, after finishing To Rescue the Constitution, I went and looked up the number of American battle dead in the entire 7-year war of independence was 6,800. The number of Israelis slaughtered on Saturday is 1,200. So you think about that 7 years. It was a long, hard war. Your chapter on Valley Forge, it was a close run thing. I mean, it was a close run thing at the beginning, in the middle, at the end. I think you have a chapter called The Unraveling Union, Chapter 9, in fact. It was a very close run thing, Bret Baier.
It really was. And listen, if per capita, if you put Israel against the U.S., that 1,200 is about 30,000, you know, if you look at the size of the country. But back in the Revolutionary War, yeah, it was, you know, Washington looked at those troops at the time, and they were ill-equipped. They were often reduced to rags and bloody feet, hunger. They had a really horrible time in Valley Forge. He looked at them and said, when he first saw them, that they were exceedingly dirty and nasty, but he cared for them, inspired them. He fought beside them, and it was really remarkable leadership if you look at it. He was a reluctant leader, but somebody who could inspire these soldiers to believe that they could win. They did win, and after that time, it was actually the most dangerous and divided time of the era. The country in colonies were coming apart. There were a lot of people who believed, you know what, forget it. Let's go back to British rule. This is not going to work. And it's in that environment that I look at this soda straw moment of the Constitutional Convention and how important that was and how crucial Washington was to really the founding of the country.
And we take it for granted. I've been teaching con law for 25 years, and I try and spend the first couple of days saying, this is not a given. When they get together in Philadelphia in 1787, as you put it, we are unraveling and countries do fall apart. And I remind students, Yugoslavia is no more. The Soviet Union is no more. I think the Palestinian Authority may go away in the next few weeks. Mexico, to some extent, is a failed state, Bret Baier. As you were researching To Rescue the Constitution, were you considering how many countries don't make it past the revolutionary moment?
Yeah, you know, listen, Washington called it a miracle that they get that document out of that convention, and more importantly, that it's ratified. He thought it was truly amazing that the men in that room, despite all of this dissent, come up with this founding document, and then the country signs on. I agree with that. I mean, Ben Franklin, you know, Washington sat in this chair, a special chair at the front of the hall and the assembly room, and carved into the chair is this crest rail and a liberty pole and a cap about freedom, but also a sun. And at the end of the convention, when the delegates are signing the Constitution, Ben Franklin says, I've often looked at that sun behind the president without being able to tell whether it was rising or setting. But now he says, I'm happy to know that it's a rising sun, not a setting sun. But there are many countries around the world where it is a setting sun, and they become disjointed group that can't get it across the finish line.
And I want to speak specifically to people who think they know everything about Washington. I just told Steve Inskeep, Bret, that I judge a book by whether or not I learn something new about someone. I think I know most of the stuff. And I learned some new stuff about Lincoln. Let me tell you what I learned new about Washington in your new book, To Rescue the Constitution. And I thought I knew Washington. I mean, I've read most of the standard bios and the big ones and the little ones. But I had forgotten, or I never learned, that Adams called on him to come out of retirement from Mount Vernon. He's an old man, right? And Adams says, war is looming with France. We need you. And Washington agreed. I didn't know any of that, Bret.
Yeah, and he's ready to pack it in at that point. That's the fourth time he comes out. He's desperately trying to get back to Mount Vernon, get back to the farm, get back to Martha. And, he is pulled into the war as a commander. He's pulled into heading up the Constitutional Convention. And obviously he's pulled into being president for 2 terms. But then again is pulled back by John Adams. And, I think it's fascinating because in this research, it painted a picture that I didn't know. And I've done these books, and you've been great to have me on. But this is the 5th of the presidential series, and it really fires me up because I learned in the process of these nuggets that we uncover. And I'm hoping that this narrative form, at least people read through it and learn something, but most importantly, that the younger generation, who I think are missing in history and how we were founded, could possibly learn something. And who knows, maybe there's another Washington out there somewhere. We need one.
That's my hope. It is popular history, and it's making a comeback because people want to know, and they don't want to be overwhelmed either. God bless all the people that write 1,000-page books. They don't work because very few people get through a 1,000-page book. You've got to get it down here. I want to close by talking about one more thing about To Rescue the Constitution. That I want to talk to you about. How do you possibly promote a book in the middle of a war? There is a committee on postponed parts at the Constitutional Convention, which reminds us that even the greatest minds in the world, and we really were blessed with a collection of genius in Philadelphia in 1787, they had to punt occasionally. They just had to punt. And the Committee on Postponed Parts, had you known of that before you started this book, Bret?
No, I didn't. And, learning about the intricacies, and this is from diaries and documents and different accounts of what happened inside that room. I learned more about the situation. They believed the slavery issue was wrong. Here is a document that, talks of liberty, and yet you're going to see a man as a three-fifths of a man. They believed that they were going to deal with that at some point, but not. They had to start the country, and they didn't deal with it then. The process of constitutional amendments grows out of the need for corrective measures. And 27 amendments, obviously the first 10 are the Bill of Rights. And, you learn about how they put it all together. The best part about this, Hugh, is, I came out of it having hope. Not because it was so smooth the beginning of our nation, but because it didn't go smoothly. And because, the dissent is baked in the cake, but so is union, and that's where Washington comes in and finding common ground. Hopefully that's going to happen.
That hope today is there. To Rescue the Constitution is a book of hope because it was not easy. It was a close-run thing. But, Bret, I want to close in our last minute. How in the world do you promote a book in the middle of a war? I mean, this could consume us with Hezbollah and Iran. The president did not name them yesterday. I was upset with him for not naming the evil. What do you do about that? Does the book tour go out the window? Are you going to be able to go out and talk to people like you love to do?
Yeah, I'm going to still do it. I'm going to do the Nixon Library and the Reagan Library and do all the stops. It's different. It evolves. It's far more important to cover what's happening on the ground in Israel. It's not about me or the book. I apologize to the publisher. They understand. But listen, the book is going to last, and what's important is getting those stories out about Israelis because what they're facing is something we've never seen.